Hi, I'm Mike Madge. I'm back with SailJuice.com, and I can't express how excited I am to have this guy on the show. I mean, I can't. I'm not going to give him all his sailing accolades here because he's only on a short time list. So, Glenn Ashby, super excited to have you on the show with us, and appreciate your time.
Pleasure, Mike. Yeah, no, good to catch up again.
Yeah. So just where are we talking to you from right now? And have you been doing any sailing since you've won the big event?
No, look, I haven't done any sailing since March. I've given myself a bit of time off to spend some time with the family, and I was looking forward to catching up with friends and getting out and about on my motorbike. But unfortunately, we've been pretty much locked down here in Melbourne for the whole time, since we've been back. And it's been unfortunate that we haven't really been able to sort of catch up with too many people. But I'm just at home at the moment in Macrae, in Victoria, and just helping my wife homeschool our two daughters. And it's been pretty nice to actually spend some time with them. So looking forward to hopefully a summer with a bit more freedom and eased restrictions, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think the theme of Sail Juice. It's getting to know really good sailors and helping us with advice. And I can tell you just a short story. I was at the F-18 Worlds a few years ago, and after the races, Greg Goodall was there. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with him, and he was holding court at the bar there after the races. He was there with his son, and of course all the rock stars were there, Mitch Booth and Trigonus, I forget the guy from Greece, but all the top players were there, and they were obviously listening to Greg. Greg has a wealth of experience, and inevitably, as usually comes up with the talk of who is the most talented cat sailor. And I could tell you, Glenn, it was unanimous. Your name was at the top of the list. They all said, in terms of cat sailing ability, Glenn is head and shoulders above most of the rest. So with that in mind, we've got you here for about 25 minutes. So I want to really, get into maybe some things you can help us with. So maybe just to get us started, what cat exactly did you get started in, and what age were you when you started cat sailing?
Yeah, look, my first catamaran was actually an Arafura Cadet, which was when I was 7 years old. Sort of put that together with my father, and it was actually a bit too big for me at the time. So I only sailed that for about a year and sailed with a friend. But really, my first catamaran was actually the Paper Tiger catamaran, which I started sailing when I was 13 years old. I only weighed 37 kilograms when I started sailing the Paper Tiger. So it suffice to say, it sat fairly high in the water, and went well in the light air races, but got my butt kicked pretty good, when there was any breeze. But went from the Paper Tiger, through to sort of Taipans and Tornado, A-Cat, sort of through my mid to late teens, and really started focusing hard more on the A-Cat and the F-18 and the Tornado sort of through my early 20s and on from there. And then the cat sort of got a bit bigger, and the pressure got a bit more later on, and here we are now. So but really the Paper Tiger, I think, was probably the real instigator, to get into catamaran sailing, and the finicky nature of those boats and the rigs being quite soft and tricky to set up and tune, I think really gave me a real insight into how to make a cat go fast. And I think having the ability to talk to older, more experienced guys and girls that were in the class as a kid, for me, really gave me a great opportunity to not only learn a lot of information but also race against grown-ups. So it sort of really forced you to sort of step up your own sailing to compete with with that adult level.
So if I got my story right, and I think it's well documented, you won a bet with Greg and you got away to your first world championship. I think, what were you, 18 years old at the time? Or so
Yep.
and apparently, like, I wasn't there obviously, but from what I've heard, you just smashed them. You were winning by 5 minutes and ahead. And so I just want to know, like, going to your first worlds, like, it's almost incomprehensible to me at 18 years old. not knowing, having been in the class that long, what were your expectations going there, and what did you have? Did you have just the boat speed on them, the boat handling?
Oh, look, yeah, look, that trip, over to Europe was my first trip to Europe, and I was just, had big eyes with the whole journey, and I was fortunate enough to be on a new boat, sort of really for the first time, on a new A-Cat, which was, I think, a Mark IV for those that remember their sort of A-Cats. It was one of the early Mark IVs, and yeah, sort of got to the event. Didn't really know anybody, but yeah, Scott Anderson and Murray Philpott, sort of being Kiwi and Aussie guys, sort of put their arm around me and sort of guided me, the best that they could to sort of get things set up and get organised for the event. And when we actually started racing, it was really quite windy, quite big waves, and I hadn't really ever known how to sort of back off. I guess at the end of the day, all the training I'd done was always, put your foot down flat to the floor and sort of hang on and send it. And that's what I did. I sort of, the first race, got around the top mark in fourth and passed sort of 3 boats down the first reach. It was sort of triangles back in those days and windward returns. And yeah, never really looked back. It just, and got to the finish line. I didn't really know whether I'd sort of done well or not. I thought, okay, well, here's the finish line. I think I've done the right amount of laps, and went through it. And yeah, that was sort of the way the regatta went. Certainly a massive eye opener, and surprised myself and probably surprised a lot of other people at the same time. So it was a great learning experience.
Wow. So that obviously must have boosted your confidence and jump started you on your A-class career, really.
Yeah, look, it's the A-class for me has really been, the people involved in the class, the sort of camaraderie, the learning, the development. Really, it's been a wonderful class, and to sort of be involved in the class, really for the past sort of 20 or 30 years, it's been excellent. And to see the sort of development of the class and be part of that development to where the boats are now, it's there's been a lot of change, but that learning and that sort of pushing the envelope and trying new things, that philosophy has really given me, I guess, the mindset of how you roll through an America's Cup campaign in a big development sense. And those learnings that you have, the sort of the frustrations, the learning why things don't work is as important as why they do work, and that sort of philosophy and that mindset, I think, is probably what's made the America's Cup journey probably as successful as it has been.
So that leads me into maybe a question Bailey White sent along. I think you're familiar with Bailey. He was the North American class chair. He's interested to know, how much further do you think, or what's next for the class? Do you see more developments in the sail, in the mast, in the hulls? What do you foresee if you're looking into the future of the A-class?
Yeah, look, I think I always sort of get asked this question, and I think it's what I like to sort of look at is you actually look back 10 years. If you're looking forward 10 years and you say, well, what's the last 10 years look like? And then you sort of look at what the trajectory is, and then you sort of say, well, what's the next 10 years going to look like? And that gives you a pretty good idea of where the boats are heading to. Obviously, the foils are getting, much more refined. The knowledge on foil sections and surface finishing and balance and the way the boats work has got a lot better. I think same thing with hull shape, aerodynamics of the hulls, and also the rigs. The masts and sails are continuing to develop as well. So I think the class is really, on a continuous sort of trajectory of just getting, more and more performance based. I think, the sort of some of the restrictions that the class does have in the foiling capacity, I hope doesn't hold the class back, in the future. I think one of the beauties about the A-Cat is its openness in development and design, and I think that's been something that's been very special with the class, as it is with the Moth class, for example, which is extremely strong at the moment, fully open. So no, I think it's great, and I think that the classic division as well, we'll also see some fantastic gains over the next few years as well. So I think, yeah, for sure, mast and sails are always developing, but the whole package is moving forward. And I think that's one of the really special things about the class.
So it's interesting you talk about that. I mean, when we think of people that are dominant in a class, a one design class, I mean, obviously the name Robert Scheidt stands up there, and what he's done in the laser class is you know, amazing, being at the last Olympics at 48 or whatever years old. But you think, okay, but Robert's got the perfect build. When you talk, he's got the perfect laser build. The class has developed somewhat, but it's pretty stagnant, strict one design class. So, I mean, in comparison, your dominance in the A-Class is, to me, even more impressive, because you're really, the boat is changing with each world. So I'm wondering, like, how have you adjusted your sailing from going from straight boards to curve boards, canted boards, boiling? How much have you had to adjust your sailing accordingly?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I think you know, as it's quite funny. Nothing happens overnight. I guess it's a real slow process of evolution when you look back. And I think being able to try and predict a little bit what the future's going to hold, I think, is probably something with development classes that is really interesting. If you can be on the leading edge of that development curve, you know, coming into a big event, you know, in any event, whether it be the America's Cup or your local club championships, if you can be on the leading edge of what you think you need to put together gear wise, but also technique wise, and how you're sailing the boat. If you can sort of nail that, hopefully you're at least as fast as the fastest guys. And I've never really asked to be faster than the fastest guys, whether it be in the Tornado or the F18. For me, I've always just really enjoyed being as fast as the fastest guys in different conditions. And then hopefully then, if you race well and you get off the start line well, you can put yourself in a good position at the end of the regatta. It's fantastic when you do have a little speed advantage. If you've worked hard and you are, you know, going well, that's great. You know, makes life a little bit easier. But when you're on the opposite end of it and you've missed a couple of opportunities, or you know you've got a deficit in your performance, you know, you really have to sail well, and you have to really set up your gear as best you can to get the best result you can. So again, I think learning, you know, what is not fast is as important as learning what is fast. And I think having the ability to and the mindset to be open to change is really important. So I think that's something that you know, I think everybody should embrace, is, you know, that mindset of the ability to keep developing and never be scared of trying things.
Yeah. Now, along those lines, like, I mean, you're obviously, you know, when you hear about you're off on a GC32, a super foiler, the America's Cup. So how often do you actually get a chance to get out on an A-Cat and practice? And when you do, how much of that time do you devote to your boat handling? How much of it is testing things?
Yeah, look, it's I haven't sailed the A for a couple of years now, actually, and it's obviously with the America's Cup side of things, it does take up, you know, quite a bit of your time. And as much as you'd love to get out, you know, and do some other events, it just, the time sort of constraints make it a little bit prohibitive. But for example, before the World Championship, you would, you know, I'd sort of really focus a pretty intense, you know, 5 or 6 weeks of training, just getting your boat handling sort of up to speed, but also in testing equipment. And I think there's a big sort of, in any class, I think, you know, testing equipment is important. And I think doing that early enough that you get comfortable with what you're going to use in a given regatta, I think is quite good. Often you'll be putting a new sail up or a new set of foils on or something like that, you know, a couple of days before the event, if that's what you know that you need to do. And you have to be willing and accepting of the fact that you might be sailing the first heat of the World Championships if you're scrambling, you know, with a new set of dagger boards or a new mainsail or a new mast or whatever it may be, to give yourself a chance. So, but in an ideal world, you know, you would sort of have a little bit of a lead up, which might start, you know, a couple of months out, and then you'll ramp that up and then sort of taper it off, you know, the last sort of week or so, where you'll just be refining your equipment and making sure that your boat's in good shape and that your body's in good shape as well. So getting enough racing in beforehand is always key as well, because one thing you often do, you turn up to a big regatta and you might not have done any meaningful racing over the last sort of few weeks. So getting some good practice racing in and just getting familiar being around other boats again, particularly in big fleets where you might be sort of 100 boat fleet, for example. You know, we don't always get to do that very often. So just getting comfortable around a lot of boats again and being able to get your head out of the sort of the melee and the chaos and actually look further up the track and actually plan your race is something that, you know, sometimes it takes you a few races to get into a regatta, and we see that quite often with all different classes that, you know, people haven't had that race experience and they might be going fast, but they might not get off the start line that well. So just putting that package together over a couple of months is generally what I would focus on. And then, you know, after the event, make sure that you're ready to have a spell and catch up with your friends and family and have a relax.
Now, back in the days when they used to race the America's Cup in the 12 meters, and I actually had a friend that was steering for Canada. A lot of the guys back at the time were laser sailors. There was Ed Baird, Terry Nielsen, and I used to have a chance to talk to them, and they said they would still bring the feel of that laser onto that 12-meter boat. They would still, you know, they'd be hooching on a wave a little bit, or they'd have a little seat of the pants type sailing with all that high tech stuff. And I'm wondering with you, when you get a chance and you're sailing the America's Cup boats, do you still bring some of that A-Cat feel to the boat?
100%. Absolutely. It's although you do have, you know, all, you know, buttons and all the electronics and all the high tech gear that you're sort of managing and all the loads and everything, absolutely there's a lot of seat of the pants sailing that still goes on, and I'd argue that'd be the same for motor racing or whatever sport it may be. I think that intuitive sort of feeling the boat through your backside is really, really important, and I think that's something that, you know, really is key to developing, and I think it's key information to process, and it's key to give that information back to sort of the designers and the engineers, particularly in the America's Cup environment. What we feel on the A-Cat, what you feel through your feet and what you feel through your hands and what you feel through your backside is key. You really become one with the boat, you know, on an A-Cat or any boat when you really get in tune with it. And it's exactly the same feeling as what you have, you know, on the cup boats. And it's although the noises and the feel might be slightly different, you get used to it, and the boat sort of talks to you, and you need to be able to listen, and it's really important for getting the best out of the boat.
Now, it's interesting you brought up your motocross, because it kind of leads me to my next question. I had again the privilege of interviewing Santiago Langer, and I don't know if you had a chance. He has a book out called Wind, an excellent book. But you just get the sense with talking to him and reading the book that he's obsessed. Sailing is an obsession with him. The Olympics, sailing, you know, lives and breathes it. Whereas the feel I get from you is you seem a lot more balanced. Like you're combining motocross, you know, camping, windsurfing. Is that the sense, or?
Yeah, look, absolutely, and I completely can, you know, concur with Santi. You know, he does live and breathe it, and it is a bit of an obsession. And I think we've all been, you know, obsessed at different times. And certainly when you get in the zone, you know, I've probably been obsessed as well for many years with my sailing. But for me personally, I really enjoy having some sort of mental escapism that I can step away from the sailing world, recharge my batteries by doing some other, you know, active activities, whether it be mountain biking or windsurfing or motorcycling. And because when you're doing those other activities, you're not thinking about sailing, you're not thinking about anything else in actual fact. So I think that sort of mental recharging, if you like, for me personally is extremely important, because when you then get back into the sailing world again, you're fully in the zone with that. And that for me is when you can make the next step, you know, in which direction and which pathway you need to take to make gains. So, yeah, that's just how I operate. That's how I always have. And I think that for me, you know, if I get stuck in a rut with one particular thing, I need to get out of it, and I need to sort of clear my head. And then when I come back into it again, I can generally make a gain. So that's how I work. And, you know, everyone works differently. And, you know, Santi's been extremely successful and a great mate. So, yeah, g'day, Santi.
Now, I just want to touch a little bit on, like, how much has, like, you've crewed for, obviously Darren Bundock's, the Olympics. You've had Nathan Otteridge on the Super Foilers, which is a series I actually really enjoyed. Lately, Peter Burling, Jimmy Spittle. How much is that crewing? Is that like something you would advise somebody just getting into cat sailing or something? Say, hey, if you can hook up with a good skipper, like, how much has that enhanced your sailing, you think?
Yeah, look, I think it's I've been very fortunate to have been able to sail with some fantastic guys and girls over the years, and I think personally for me the diversity of being able to helm and crew well, I think is really, really good to do. And I think learning the opposite role than what you're doing, and the intricacies of, for example, if you're crewing, doing a few races as a helmsman, or even some training, helming the boat, you get to have a really good feel of when the boat's going well and when it's not. And I think also for the helmsman to swap over and crew is quite interesting as well. So I think for me over the years, having the opportunity to sort of do both where you cross over, it's been really good for my sailing. And I think understanding both crewing roles and different roles on a crewed or a multi-crewed boat, doing different roles on that one boat, I think is actually a really good way to learn, and having an understanding of what your helmsman's feeling, for example, or what your crew's feeling, to then be able to change gears accurately and adjust the boat to where it needs to be and put it back in the groove again, I think it's really important for success. So I encourage people to mix it up, and you don't have to do it all the time, but just do it every now and again if you can. And I think globally your knowledge will grow immensely.
So just a couple other questions came through here, and I think I know the answer. Bailey White wants to know if you've ever been scared on a boat. I think I know the answer would be yes to that, but maybe we'll, what's the scaredest you've ever been? Like, you've been on some pretty, I've watched that Super Foiler. I got to think that got the adrenaline going a little bit.
Yeah, no, some fun and interesting times on the Super Foiler for sure. Probably some of the scariest times was on the AC-72, actually, when we were initially really pushing that boat hard in Auckland. That was probably some of the scariest times that we've had, sort of as a team. You've got a lot of money at stake, and you've got to push the limits pretty hard. When we were training for sailing in big breeze in San Francisco, but I think over the years I've probably become a little bit immune almost to the scare factor, and I think doing other activities now probably scare me a lot more than going sailing on some of these bigger boats. But having said that, it's it's a different scariness than what it is sailing a bigger boat than it is sailing a small boat. Sometimes sailing your Moth or your A-Cat in 20 knots, going downwind in choppy waves can be scarier than sailing a big boat doing 50 odd knots, So it's all relative. It's a bit like driving a go-kart on a wet track versus driving a Formula One car. I think there's a lot of similarities, but just the size can be a bit different. So I think it's all relative, and I think you have to scare yourself every now and again to know where the edge is and to keep yourself alive.
It's funny. I just got a quick, interesting story. I had a chance when I was younger to participate in what was called the Richardson's Cup, which is match racing for the Great Lakes. And at the time, the Detroit Grand Prix, we were out of Detroit, and the Detroit Grand Prix was on. And part of the festivity was we took a Formula One racer on the boat, and it was blowing 20, 25. He said that's as scared as he's ever been, is on that boat. And it was a 40-foot North American 40. And so it's interesting you said that there. But, well, I appreciate all your time. I don't want to take up all your time because I know there is a couple other people had questions here. John is with us. John Dowling has been super helpful to me with my introduction to A-Cat. So, John, you had a question you wanted to talk to Glenn about?
Yeah, Glennie, probably my question relates to the future. You just related earlier that you look at the last 10 years backwards and then look forward for the next 10 years. I guess to personalise it, what's in store for you over, say, the next 12 months, and then extrapolate that out to, say, the next 5 years? Is it America's Cup? Is it Nationals for A-Cats? Is it Worlds for A-Cats, or something else? And my little spies tell me you've become a bit of an amateur farmer.
Yeah, look, at the farming side of things has been pretty interesting, John, I must say. Definitely amateur would be the word. Learning lots, and really just bought the farm as a bit of a getaway to go and ride some motorbikes with the kids, to be fair, but it sort of turned into a little bit more than that over the last sort of few months. But look, as far as my own personal sailing, it's a bloody good question. I haven't really locked in anything as such. I've, fortunately in a position where I can sort of, I guess, pick and choose a bit of pathway with the America's Cup moving forward. So I haven't locked anything in there to any great extent. A-Cat wise, I've been looking out the window and seeing a few of the guys sailing around out at Macrae, which has sort of started to get the fire rekindled a little bit, I must say. But yeah, look, I've actually thoroughly enjoyed, having a little bit of a break. So the next 12 months, I'm really keeping open-minded to what's going on. I am actually working on a little bit of a project behind the scenes at the moment, which I'll be able to sort of shed some more light on over the next few months. But it's to do with sailing, but I'll be able to sort of give some more information on that in the coming months. But yeah, no, looking forward to sort of doing a little bit of sailing with my girls over the next few months. Possibly, getting a little dinghy that we can get out on and do some sailing together. They're both getting a bit keener now, and certainly looking at the A-Cat and the Moth, the way things are going there at the moment, it really is exciting to see, some of the developments and how the boats are going. So we'll see. I mean, I think next year, obviously there's quite a few events with the A's, F18s, Sail GP. Obviously not a whole lot of America's Cup sailing for the next couple of years going on, but it's really, the decision making and the development of the America's Cup class, the AC75. There's a lot of work getting done behind the scenes on that at the moment, which takes time and effort to put into that. But yeah, just obviously, having a bit of spell at the moment, and really at the end of the day, if I didn't have a spell, I don't think I'd probably want to do much sailing down the track. So I need to give myself a break to get back into it. And when I do, I'll thoroughly enjoy it again.
Nice. Well, one last thing we're going to do with you here, Glenn, if it's all right, is we're going to put you in the coaching seat here. We always like to get some tips on sailjuice.com. And we got a video of you coming into the windward mark. And maybe just if you could just kind of analyze, what goes into a good windward mark rounding on an A-Cat, what the control settings are. Well, we'll let you do a bit of coaching here.
Trying to work out where this is. Oh, that's quite a few years ago now. Yeah, so obviously coming into the top mark, you sort of obviously know what sort of breeze that you're sailing in and what phase of wind shift you're in. So whether you're looking to either go straight at the once you get around the top mark, or whether you need to do a dive. Whether you're needing to sort of do an early jibe, depending which way you're wanting to go. So what you're basically doing is you're wanting to set the boat up as accurately as you can for the exit of the top mark. So sacrificing a couple of feet or a couple of meters, to actually exit really cleanly around the gate is pretty important, because you can gain and lose massively by executing this well or bad. The corners of the racetrack are generally where you make the biggest gains and biggest losses in a fleet. So generally what you'll be wanting to do is look at what breeze that you're sailing in, what you're likely to be sailing in on the initial early part, and actually get your certainly your rig set up, but also get your foil set up for what you need for the downwind. And on the new boats now, that's pretty much adjusting your rudder rake is the key to get that right. And the daggerboard rake to a lesser extent now that we can change the rudders. So that's pretty much what I'll be looking to do, just coming into that early first part of the top mark.
And I saw you threw some control lines off. Which control lines were you adjusting there at that point of the windward mark rounding?
Yeah, so that would have been the mast rotation and the traveller. So because you're still pretty much on the breeze coming just in that early part of the mark, you'll be still sheeted really tightly on your main sheet, and you'll be basically, just as your apparent widens up a little bit, you'll be wanting to actually ease your traveller down and also ease your mast rotation down to match that.
So still quite a bit of movement to keep that perfect attitude of the boat.
Yeah, look, you'll be moving your weight around. This footage here was from, I think, the World Championships in Punta Ala, I think it was, quite a few years ago now. So we didn't have adjustable rudders back then. They were just pretty much set and forget. So your weight shifting was really a lot more critical back then than it is now, to actually change the pitch of the boat and actually increase the angle of attack on the daggerboard. So these boats were actually a lot harder to sail well than what the new boats are now. So yeah, a lot of weight shifting and a lot of trimming to actually load and unload the daggerboards to actually raise the boat up out of the water.
Yeah, so that gets back to, like we talked about, how much your technique has changed over the years to make up for the different A-Cat designs that you've had.
Yeah, for sure. You sort of adapt and you learn on the way through.
So one of the things, and I don't want to keep you much longer, but one of your fortes, I mean, I've met you. I don't know if you remember me talking to you, but and I'm 5'8", and I think I had an inch on you maybe. So, I mean, when you think of really good cat sailors, you usually think tall, lanky, but you seem to, like, your trapezing is videos I've seen is unbelievable how low you can get.
Yeah, look, I need every bit of help I can get, Mike, to be honest, with the trapezing side of things. So, standing on your tippy toes, which I've sort of learned to do over the years, to try and make myself as tall as I can, and keeping your arms, up as high as you can to get your weight outboard as far as you can has always been something that I've worked really hard on, and certainly through the, sailing the Tornado and the Olympic sailing that I've done, every inch of weight that you could get further outboard, you'd go that little bit better in that really, really close racing environment. So, just something that I've worked on, and I think, I would have loved to have been a bit taller, but at the end of the day, being a bit shorter is certainly good for some classes, and maybe on the America's Cup boats, it's actually been a blessing being able to run around a bit quicker than I would have been if I was 6'5".
And do you try and actually do your sheeting? Do you try and do it without bending your legs?
Yeah, look, ideally, not sort of bending your legs and not upsetting the boat is ideal. If you can, squeeze the sheet on really smoothly and ease really smoothly, it's, you keep the boat a little more settled. Depending on the loads, sometimes it's tricky. And I remember, the Tornado, the sheet loads on the Tornado, for example, with the Jenica and the main sheet, they're extremely highly loaded boats. And the A-Cat is as well now with some of the sheet loads that we're getting now as well. So, sometimes you need to give it a little bit of a squeeze with your whole body, and particularly when you're getting tired, you sort of use every single muscle in your body, including your teeth and your eyes, I think, when you're sheeting things on. But look, obviously your fitness and your strength, that makes a big difference, particularly when you're getting to the third or the fourth race of the day. I think being able to continue to sail the boat accurately is really important, and I think your fitness and just being boat fit, and having put the time and effort in previously leading up to the regatta, that's when it pays dividends. When you're not getting tired and you can continue to sail the boat well. So we all know it's a pretty slippery slope when you start getting tired, and you trim badly, you steer badly, and your boat's ultimately slower, and you risk sort of capsizing.
Any special tips you'd give for fitness on sailing an A-Cat? What you do, or is it just time on water?
Yeah, look, there's no substitute really for time on water. But having said that, though, I think one of the things that I've, sort of, I guess for me personally, running, cycling and the rowing machine has actually been a really good one over the years. For the A-Cat, I think the rowing machine sort of gives you, it's bang for buck. It works quite a lot of the muscle groups if you're time poor, which a lot of us all are. It's basically, working your back, your shoulders, your arms and your legs. So getting in and out on the trapeze is really important to do that accurately, coming out of tacks and jibes. And I think, the rowing machine, basically the ergo, effectively works most of the muscle groups that you do when you'd be sailing an A-Cat. So that for me is probably one that I'd recommend if people are relatively time poor. It's certainly something if you spend even just 15 or 20 minutes a day, putting yourself through a bit of a workout on the rowing machine can really help when you do get back on the water again, or to substitute time on the water if the weather's no good.
One last question: are we going to see you in Houston next year at the Worlds?
That's a great question. We will see. Not sure, but sounds like a brilliant place, and talking to Ben Hall, online, and a few of the guys, it's a brilliant place, and I think it'll be a fantastic event. So I think the chances are probably greater than 50%.